Sharks in the pool, that is not cool. I need a tool, take me to school. Feet first into this league, me first, that cannot be. Under the underdog, Monica G. Feeling a whole lot better suddenly. I get in, winning again. You're 1 and 2 in the bag, and I'm going for 3. That is the beat down. God of the best, so I keep. Now, y'all treading water for weeks. Now I'm the Sharks, so I eat. Now, look, I am not sorry. I understood the pump from which I started. And navigating these drafts is cathartic. So, thanks for the invite to party. Yeah, Dynasty underdog bite down. Up at the day and the night. Now, easy as flying a kite. Now, come take a look at it right now. Dynasty underdog bite down. Up at the day and the night. Now, easy as flying a kite. Now, come take a look at it right now.
Welcome to episode 143 of Dynasty Underdog. Unfortunately, no Uriah here, but we do have Josh returning. Super stoked.
Hey.
And if you cannot tell, it's bucket hat season. So let's all join in. Let's join in.
I love it.
Let's get it. All right, we are post NFL draft. Very, very exciting time. We are going to go over, there's a couple of news items we'll touch on today, and then we're going to get into looking at some of the Dynasty Underdog listener leagues that finished up. We have 3 of them all finished up. We're going to look at the average draft position between all 3 of those, kind of how we did. I threw in DFF's ADP as well. We can look at how we drafted compared to ADP, maybe pick out some kind of craziness that went on, and we'll talk some trades and stuff like we normally do. So nothing too crazy. When Uriah comes back, we'll probably do some risers and fallers post-draft, but I think we want to have the whole crew here to get into some of that stuff. So with that said, Josh, welcome back, man. How you doing?
Thank you, man. Hey, I'm glad to be back. Work's been crazy this month, but that's all now in the back view, and let's all roll down. Time for some fantasy football. Get strapped back in there and ready to rock and roll.
I like it. You managed to stay with the listener leagues and the drafts going. You seem to stay in touch with it even through the work. There was no problem there.
No, man. As you know, that as much as I can put that first and foremost, I do, but it's life. We have to roll with the punches, especially during the off season.
Listen, we're degenerates. I know you're scrolling on your phone, looking through ADP. I know, I get it. All right, let's hop into the good stuff.
Let's do it.
Starting off, big one here. Lamar Jackson signs his contract. He's back with Baltimore. I was kind of one of the people who was a little bit like, I think it's not going to really work out, but in the end, they get it done. And honestly, kind of, if you read the tea leaves throughout the whole thing, kind of makes sense what happened there. I think what we really need to talk about is kind of his value and where we're at this point, right? They added Zay Flowers through the draft. They added a big time weapon for him in the first round at wide receiver. They have Rashad Bateman there. They brought in Odell Beckham Jr. They have J.K. Dobbins, pretty star-studded cast.
Mark
Andrews, of course, can't forget my guy. How do you feel about Lamar Jackson? I feel like he has QB1 potential again, right? He's right back in the fold.
For sure. And if there's ever a time for him to prove that he's worth this contract, it would be now. Excuse me. My biggest thing with the contract was I really think the Ravens thought there was going to be more interest for him. I don't want to use the C word, but if the C word was involved, that would be one explanation for it. But everything I'm hearing is once he saw what Jalen Hurts signed for, he realized what he wanted was not going to be realistic. That's right. What helped close this deal and get it done. And I just honestly think he just looked around. There really were no other major landing spots. Nobody's going to pony up that kind of money for him. So why not sign back where he knows with a team that wants him? Obviously, we're going to pay him what he wanted, but at the end of the day, everybody's happy. Believe me. I'm sure he's not crying in the bank one bit.
Yeah, I'm a bit upset at myself for not going out and getting a share or two of Lamar over the past couple months because his value is, as low as it'll ever be probably for the rest of his career outside of an injury or something crazy like that happening. So, yeah, anybody who bought in, congratulations. If somebody is still for some reason low on him, I don't know why they would be. Definitely I'd be buying into him because with Todd Monken, with the offensive coordinator change, they're going to pass the ball more. Now, how much more? I'm not saying he's about to be a 4,500, 5,000 yard passer. That's not going to happen. But
so what you're saying is his quote saying that he wants to pass for 6,000 yards is not actually going to come to fruition?
No, but I'll tell you what, having that want in him for that, great. Let the guy pass. We want more of it, and we want to see more of a dual threat. So there's not really much actionable here. I wouldn't be selling on Lamar. I think he's a great dynasty asset in startups. He was floating to the back of the first, and it was just money grabbing him there. So if that's happening, do not shy away from Lamar.
Oh, for sure. We'll talk about it later on when we discuss trades, but I was actually able to pick up a share of him this week. I believe that's my only share of him I have. And in my opinion, I think I got a great deal for him, but we'll discuss that later on.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get into that soon. Okay. We talked about this a little bit. I don't know if you wanted to bring this up. You weren't here last week. We did talk about Aaron Rodgers finally making his way over to the New York Jets. He forced himself in there, and then he essentially went ahead and brought in all of his old buddies. He brought Randall Cobb in there this past week. I mean, you name it, they're bringing him in. So what was I even talking about here? Jordan Love's value. Leaving Jordan Love behind. We talked about this last week a little bit, right? Jordan Love and kind of what his value is. I think we were talking around like the end of the first, like 110 range-ish. And I like personally, like I'd just rather take whatever assets there or the liquidity of that 110 over Jordan Love. Now we're seeing what it is coming to fruition. Now maybe you feel more comfortable with Jordan Love than whatever is at the 110 spot. I'd prefer like a Michael Mayer over Jordan Love because I don't really believe in Jordan Love, and it's tight end premium, super flex. So there's value in both of these assets. I don't know. Like I definitely see the value in Jordan Love at 110, but how do you feel about it? Are you comfortable with that?
Before I answer that, I'm just curious. I know 110 might be a little bit early for this, but Jordan Love or Hooker?
I mean, Jordan Love, because he has a surefire starting role, and Hooker may never get that. Like, obviously, you don't love Goff, but they like Goff, and they're putting a really good team around him. And if he succeeds this year, very unlikely they move on to what was Hooker, a third-round pick?
Yeah.
Or I think it was a third-round pick,
right?
Yeah. I think the better discussion, honestly, at this point is Will Levis or Jordan Love. I think that's probably the idea here is, are you more comfortable going and just grabbing Will Levis, or do you want Jordan Love? And to anybody's point who's watching, like, yeah, Jordan Love may be as good, if not better than what Will Levis is right now. But as an upside project, I think Levis has a little more juice there. The landing spot's not great in Tennessee, but it's not the worst either, especially if he develops. So
right.
I think I'd be more comfortable with Levis personally, because I think that unless he we've seen quarterbacks in Superflex, they do maintain value over time pretty well. That said, he fell to the second, so he's a little more shaky. It's really tough. Because I want to say Levis, but I do think Love is probably the smarter and safer play.
The main reason I wanted to bring this up this week is because Jake, great friend of the show, was discussing this last night, and I believe DU too. He's very thin on running back. I'm thin on quarterback. So we were just discussing some possible trades. He approached me to do Najee straight up for Jordan Love.
Gotcha.
Now, I could see the argument, but I still feel, and as I expressed to him, Najee is, in my mind, still a little bit more valuable than Jordan Love is. So I was looking for something like a Jordan Love and like Gesicki in a second or something for Najee. I thought that was pretty fair. We traded it up going down, but it just got me thinking of what his value is right now. I bought Jordan Love last year for 2 seconds in the league. I felt pretty comfortable with that. I just wasn't sure what you're pegging his value at right now.
Yeah, I may not be giving Jordan Love enough credit, right? Because the Packers are giving him plenty of credit, and I'm dropping shit all over the place. And the Packers are giving him plenty of credit. I actually did acquire him in a couple places last year as throw-ins, as like, would be second round pick pieces, like throwing that kind of stuff in a deal to finish it off. And I'm very happy to have him. Don't get me wrong. So maybe I'm not giving him enough credit. Maybe he's actually an okay asset, and he is worth that 110 spot.
But
it is pretty rough at 110. 110 is really rough. As we're going to get into the dynasty leagues here and the rookie drafts we did, it's sickening back there.
Yeah, and that's the main reason when we were discussing it a minute ago that I brought up Hayden Hooker over Will Levis is just because in most leagues I feel after 110 Levis is going to be gone. Yeah,
for sure. For sure. I don't know. I've seen him go in the second or fall towards the second in drafts. I think that we're very all over the place on Levis right now. I don't think there's any consensus because some people still see value in Tennessee. First of all, Tennessee moved up to get him, right?
Right.
It's not like they just sat there and waited for him to come to him. So they clearly wanted to go get him. I think some teams in the first round were willing to go after him. I think there were probably maybe one or two, and it was most likely Indianapolis, and they went with Anthony Richardson. And after that, he didn't really have any suitors, unfortunately, in the first round,
Right.
So it's tough for him, but I'm kind of warming up to Jordan Love over him, just kind of understanding that he's already a starting quarterback. He's already made that hurdle, right? He's kind of gotten over that obstacle. It's really tough. Yeah.
And back to something you said a minute ago, where you said that the Packers are kind of hyping him up right now, and you like that and you're buying into that. Do you think that's because they truly believe in him long term, or more so that he's their, lack of better terms, their only option right now? I mean, obviously there's still some guys out there, but nobody you would really want to throw out there for a full season to start.
I think it's the latter for me, probably. Like, I think that it's more out of necessity than it is out of want. Granted, they drafted him in the first round, right? Like, they drafted him in the first round and they sat him there and they moved on from Rodgers for him. So that's a lot of praise and a lot of encouragement. Like, if you're looking for it, if you want to make the narrative work for you, like, you can do it with Jordan Love for sure. I personally think what you were trying to do, adding those pieces and trying to get that for Najee or whatever, it makes more sense doing it with the extra pieces involved. I don't quite see it one for one right now, though. Again, if Jordan Love works out, like, that is, getting a starting quarterback for a running back is like a great deal. So it's very, very up in the air there. And I don't have a very, I think, strong take on Jordan Love. I'm definitely more on the wait and see side, and I'm not. I guess I'm just not willing to pay first round picks for him. But that's where it's at now. He's a back end of the first value. Bottom line.
And last thing before we move on, let's say 3 to 4 starts in, he looks shaky. Are you panicking, or are you going to wait out for the whole season to see if he can get his feet under him and kind of develop into something?
I mean, if panicking means, am I going to sell him for like a second in 24? Then yeah, like, I wouldn't mind doing that if somebody's like, this guy needs a little bit of time. Like, I'm willing to buy in, just not at a first round pick, but I'll give you like maybe an early second, something like that, or a second plus a third.
Right.
At that point, I'm going to start looking for ways for outs. I can't really, I don't like holding on to assets that I don't believe in general. I do see some light at the end of the tunnel for Jordan Love, so I'm willing to give it a shot. And in worst case scenario, I didn't pay a first, so I'm not going to be super upset if it doesn't work out and I don't get anything for the return on whatever this little investment is,
Perfect. No, that works.
Yeah. If I'm going to be spending a first, I think I would rather package it with something else and go get a better quarterback. You know what I mean? Like, I'd always rather go for like stability than like the upside shot and spend a first round pick. I feel like you're just kind of leaving some on the table. All right. We've talked about Jordan Love for way too long. Like, it's ridiculous. All right. So we actually hit up the Discord and we asked them, is there anything you want us to discuss? Some stuff that I think I just throw in like the trade etiquette bucket came up. So I'm kind of just trade etiquette and stuff bucket. That's what we're talking about right now. So just going to bring up some stuff and just see how we feel about it. So I think one thing that was brought up in the Discord was when you're making a trade, considering the other team's roster, right? And I'm not sure everybody necessarily does that. I mean, when I go and make a trade, I always go and check the other person's roster. I never just go search player and like send whatever trade I want because it's, that, and maybe I've just gotten accustomed to it, but it really will rarely work that way. I think unless you look at their team and say like, what does this person need? Are there a couple positions they're light at, and go in that direction. And I think if you do that, there's even more opportunity to win a trade, as we like to call it, right? Because you can kind of pinpoint areas in their team that they're deficient in, maybe offer them players that you don't think are super valuable, but they might see more upside in, and then get a player that you want in return that you see much more value in. So I think that while there's a big part of this is like being a good trade partner and not offering crappy deals that don't make sense for the other team. That's a big part of it. But I think the other part of it is there is a huge advantage to yourself in doing this and figuring out how you can get one over on managers sometimes using their own roster against them, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. And also, in my opinion, if a team is needing the position more so, let's say a tight end more so than a wide receiver or anything, you might be able to bend them over a little bit just to fulfill that tight end need they need. So I definitely think you should always be checking the other roster before you approach any kind of trade, regardless of if you think it's meant to be or makes sense or not. But definitely check it out to see how you, like you said, how you could get one over on them.
Yeah, and we sound real shady saying it like that and like bend them over, but like, I mean, like a big part of Dynasty is you're trying to gain value, and
exactly,
and everybody's your opponent when you're talking about trades and head-to-head matchups and whatever you're doing, you're each other's opponent. So you're always going to be trying to make your team better and hopefully not make their team better than yours, right? That's not the goal. And obviously we want to be good trade partners. I think this question probably stemmed from a place of frustration, right? Where you get a lot of trade offers that are just absolute garbage. I think the best way to approach that is say back to them, hey, this doesn't make any sense to me. You know, maybe reach out and we can work something out. You can burn bridges. Like I've seen people like, hey, like you definitely didn't check my roster, right? Like stuff like that. I mean, you can definitely open it up to people if you know them well. You can say that kind of stuff, but you can help inform the other manager to help it be easier on yourself. But yeah, a big part of this is kind of being informed, knowing what you're doing. After years of playing Dynasty, it becomes inherent. I think for us, that's just part of our process. We're like, oh, I want to make a trade. Where's this? Whose team is this player on? Go to team, look at team, make, construct offer, send offer, maybe have a back and forth counter, and boom. Right. And I have a trade actually that's a good example of kind of just like really good trade partners and just kind of back and forth and not having a lot of disagreement and just getting something done. There's a lot of value in that kind of stuff. So for the people out there who don't think that this matters, it really does. This stuff matters to people, and you frustrate people and you annoy people and they don't want to trade with you. It's real.
Oh, it is.
Josh is like, yes, it is. Yeah. Trust me. There's plenty of you out there I don't trade with anymore.
Yep. And okay. And vice versa also. I know there's people that won't even approach me for a trade. So it is what it is.
I mean, you're a pretty cordial person to trade with. The values aren't always there with us, but it's never like
it's never hostile,
negative vibes or anything like that. And yeah, generally they're realistic within range. I mean, sometimes you send me some madness, but yeah, it's all good. I'm sure
it starts the conversation. It starts the conversation.
It starts the conversation of sorts. The conversation or disagreement.
A conversation, not the conversation. A conversation.
Yes. Good. Good way to describe it. Okay, so next bit here. This was something that I kind of was thinking of, and I'm wondering like what the best way to do this is, right? So I've pointed this out, I think, a couple months back in a startup where I was saying, I think DU3 is when I pointed it out, that past like the 10th, 11th round, it's absolute mayhem in a dynasty startup draft, right? Like it is just, it's just so hard to navigate that range that I prefer to get up earlier in the draft. So let's say you have a startup coming up, right? How is the best way to approach that? You know that you don't want to be, and obviously you can't say, hey, I want to send all my 20 plus round picks for all your 11. Nobody's doing that, right? So you have to obviously jump up in the range from like 12 to 18 probably. You can massage maybe 2 deals with those picks and get up, right? But I think what I'm trying to ask, and I want to know what your perspective on this is like, how do you approach the league about wanting to do this? Do you wait till the draft, until mid-draft, until it gets to the 9th, 10th round? You're like, oh, okay, I'll start hitting people up. Or do you just go in to the league chat, your sleeper chat right now, drafts in 7 days, and you're like, hey guys, I want to jump up into the 11th round. Anybody willing to do it? Like, do you think that you lose any of your leverage? Do you think you lose any of your leverage by just going out there too early and saying it? Or do you think that you could get ahead and kind of get maybe a good deal?
So I view it on both sides. I think approaching it early is definitely a good idea if you kind of know the league and know the people you're dealing with, and you want to discuss something that might take a couple days to discuss. But then on the flip side, if you're dealing with new people that you don't know or people that are very impulsive, it might be better to wait during the draft itself, because then, oh, hey, your pick's coming up in 2 picks. You want to get out of it? How about you take on these other picks of mine? And people also sometimes in a vacuum will look at it, the mass over, or the quantity over quality. So they might see 3 to 4 picks between 18 and 24 is more valuable to them than an 11th rounder, especially in the startup. Because they might think that, oh, I could get some guys that have fallen through or just beef up my bench a little bit. So I just definitely think you have to be able to read the league you're dealing with and read the league members that you're also dealing with and really just kind of figure out that way.
Okay. Yeah. I do think I want to get ahead of it. And I do think that getting ahead of it, there's advantage to that because I think for me, what I've been doing is I've been going into like sleeper drafts that I'm in or just like, trying to go to ADP and say, who is in ADP of round 11, 12, 13. And I already know that I don't want to be in 12, 13, 14. You know what I mean? So I don't know if everybody's doing that process right now, like I am, and searching through and like, even during the draft, I don't think everybody like Sleeper makes it super easy. It says, projected round 13. You can literally see like who would be there. And so I can tell that people aren't doing that because I'm jumping up for players and I'm like, why would you want to jump back here? Like for what, So I think that there's an advantage to maybe doing it early where people don't even have the opportunity to do that and maybe aren't looking at early ADP and stuff like that. So I think I want to get ahead of it, but I do think that it could give up some leverage in just like, in just allowing maybe everybody in the league to also see what I'm trying to do, right? Because I'm saying I want to do this and they're going to go investigate. Why do you want to do this? So that's the only reason I was saying to you, give up some leverage.
But also you're very risk adverse. You want to know who your picks are going to be when you'll have them there. You really are not a gambling man when it comes to this kind of stuff. And you don't want to take that gamble of, the person I want might be around still. You rather be able to jump up there and know for sure, this person's going to be there.
That's true.
Now, changing gears a little bit, what's your feeling on somebody, let's say somebody's picking 2 or 3 picks ahead of you. They pick the person you really want or you're really aiming to get. Are you going to slightly overpay to get that player? Or are you going to kind of just view it as a wash and move on for somebody else?
That's a great question. This is a great question. I don't like showing my hand and I don't like giving up value for any reason, really. So, especially in that case where it's like, the way I try to play it generally is obviously like a tiering system of sorts where I have a really good handle on, I have my rankings and I have a really good handle on kind of what tier everybody falls in. So I'll generally have a couple options where I'm comfortable with and I plan to, if it doesn't go that way. I think in a recent draft, I'm not like super high or anything, but I think Russell Wilson is a pretty good bounce back candidate. And I had an idea, like, I really want Russell Wilson. Like, he's low valued. He's going in like the, end of the 4th, 5th round kind of thing, whatever. Like, and that's my whole idea. He got picked probably middle of the round before I was going to select him. Right. And of course I could go reach out and be like, hey, I'll shoot you like a 13th and this pick for Russell Wilson. You know what I mean? But I had Kirk Cousins down there too. And I'm like, yeah, I have Justin Jefferson. I can kind of, put them both together. There's not much, they're not far off. Obviously, maybe, some stability in years, this, that, and the other. But again, I have a plan and I kind of just move on. I do not like showing my hand in that way because also if I really do want him, I'd rather let the dust settle, let them forget where they got him at what value and that I wanted him maybe. And then just kind of approach a trade and it just kind of like it organically came up a week or two later, No,
that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm always like, it may be like, it does seem sometimes like thinking about it too much, but I do think timing matters and those kind of things matter. I think that where people's heads at during drafts, all those different things, they matter. And if you can catch them at a downtime when they're not necessarily on their A game, you might be able to kind of, catch them not thinking about what value they got them for, what value they're getting back. Like I've seen that happen in certain trades after startups where I go and trade for a player and I just traded 2 assets that I got way later in the draft for that player. And it's, because they gained some value for the right or wrong reasons. But one way or another, I kind of used that value to get over to a better asset. And I know what it is because they don't remember the acquisition cost, and the acquisition cost shouldn't matter. But when you're so close to the acquisition, then it kind of does matter because they shouldn't have lost that much value in that time for any reason. So anyway, I'm kind of getting in the weeds a bit, but that stuff matters. Okay. We had another question come up. Somebody wanted us to talk a little bit about the psychology behind, winning and losing trades kind of thing. Right. And maybe the reluctance to complete a trade because you don't want to lose a trade, even though you want the player probably, right? I think a lot of people probably end up in situations where they have a trade in front of them and they're like, I do want to do that, But consensus says I lose that trade. So I probably shouldn't do that. You know what I mean?
This happened to me this morning.
I love it. I love it. And honestly, obviously sometimes you got to check yourself. You got to check yourself for sure. But, part of what we're trying to do is, we're trying to gain that little edge by being able to foresee some rise in values, foresee, players hitting that haven't hit yet. Right. So that's part of what this is. I think that to really succeed and excel in dynasty leagues, you do need to take chances often. And I'm risk averse. So I do obviously try to limit how risky the chances are. But that said, we talk a lot about on here. We've talked a lot about this. Shane Swagger came on here one day and said, you lose a trade now that you win in 6 months. That's what you want to be doing. Right. And I don't know how to kind of work people down from the ledge of like, I can't make this trade because it's so, it's not going to look good for me in the league and whatever it is. But I just think, you have a good process, you have a good belief system, you have, a good idea of what somebody's going to do. And when you have that idea, I want to go after this player, you should do that. You know what I mean? You should make those deals and you shouldn't be scared of doing that because that is how you make huge jumps in your dynasty leagues, in my opinion.
No, of course. And that's what I had to do today. I do weigh the pros and cons of it and decide if this gamble would be worth paying off in 6 months to a year. And I viewed it as it did. So again, when we get to trades, we'll talk about it then, but that's just one of those things you have to evaluate.
I have one exactly like that. I didn't even think about it, but I made a trade same as you a couple days ago, and we'll talk about it when we get to the trades and we'll kind of bring it full circle towards the end of the episode to show you what we mean as far as losing a trade now, winning it in 6 months, and kind of not being so scared to do it and why you shouldn't be. So we'll get into that in a few minutes. Let's hop into some of our Dynasty Underdog Listener League stuff. We haven't done a ton on the Listener Leagues. I have used some of the DU mock drafts and stuff for the YouTube content, but this I think is going to be really fun. I was just wondering, can we share this on the screen at all? Like,
yeah, give me a second here.
I just want to see what it looks like. I mean, we can remove it, but if it doesn't look good, but I am interested to see if we can show the Google sheet. So while Josh does that, what I put together here is essentially we have 3 Dynasty Underdog Listener Leagues. If you're a listener and you're in the leagues, you know this. If not, now you know. I put together a spreadsheet showing the order of the picks for each of our listener leagues. We finished all of them out over the past couple of weeks. And I looked at the average draft position for all of our leagues. I looked at, and I pulled in the average draft position that DFF tracks. So we have DFF ADP versus our DU ADP. We can look at the standard deviation between that. And we can also look at the standard deviation between the picks in the 3 listener leagues to kind of just point out some guys who are going a little bit all over the place, and we can talk about why, and guys who are maybe a bit higher or lower on, and that kind of thing. Just give you our thoughts on the draft and maybe rip into people who drafted these players. So
let me.
Oh, I love this. I love this, Josh. It's perfect. You can leave it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Just leave it. Right. It's fine. Okay. All right. So we know how to do this. We know what we're doing. This is great. I love it. All right. So this is what I was just describing. So I think, first thing I want to say is shout out all of our listener league members. They made this such a fun process, super active, and trades going down, all that. So big shout out.
Oh, huge shout out. And really quick, I just have to say that we're going to rename DU3 the Flash because that draft was over before anybody knew it.
It was. DU3 was the fastest draft. DU1 was the slowest draft. So, it makes sense. The guys who've gotten a little comfortable or just kind of laid back doing their thing. Everybody in DU3 is jacked up, ready to go for the season. So, yeah, it was really fun. Really, really fun stuff. But let's just kind of look at this on the face of it and point out some of the things. Now, what I have highlighted in the standard deviation for the picks column is anything over 2 and then anything over 1, I believe, in the ADP standard deviation, just to kind of pick out who we are, like as a league, who are kind of higher on than what would be kind of consensus analysts for DFF ADP. All Okay, so the first one I got to point out, right? We were talking about Will Levis at the beginning of this episode, and he is the first one who kind of gets brought up in the fluctuation of values discussion, right? Looking at him here, DU1 pick 12, DU2 pick 8, and just slowly going down. DU3 pick 6. Like, that is as high as I've seen Will Levis.
I was shocked at 6. Eight I could understand. 10 I definitely could understand, but 6, I mean, God.
But even
or 8, 12,
even,
sorry.
Yeah, even 8 is a little higher though than I think you see anywhere else. I mean, if you're looking at the DFF ADP, he's 9.8, right? So around pick 10.
Right, but you also got to remember that people, especially in Superflex, will overpay for that quarterback position, especially on somebody that has high upside that all intents and purposes will have the chance to start, is going to be Tannehill's backup. As much as I like my boy Willis, Levis is going to have the upper hand on that one.
Absolutely. And the thing that people have probably heard me on a number of different shows, episodes, whatever, talk about, QB is king in Superflex. You can't really let him fall. Justin Herbert, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? Justin Herbert got picked in the top 10, if I remember correctly, or the top 15, if I remember correctly, one of those two. If Will Levis got picked in the top 10 or 15, I would not be at all shocked that he's going 6 overall. That would make sense to me. So the fact that he fell to the second and we're not, I don't think everybody is adjusted to that yet. I think he could have easily, I think whoever got him at 6 probably could have got him at their next pick in the second round. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. I would have to look at the draft board again to see, but
I mean, just looking at it here, I guess that's, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that, but I would have traded down. You know what I mean? Like, you got to trade down there, I think, or something, but that one really stuck out.
Yeah. You could have traded, in my opinion, probably 6 down to 9 or 10 and pick up a second or third or something.
Yep. I think that would have been the move. Okay, so here's the next one I want to look at, and we're kind of going to just jump back between, whether we're looking at pick standard deviation or ADP standard deviation, just doesn't really matter. But I'm looking at Zach Charbonnet right here, I believe. Yeah, Zach Charbonnet. This one's interesting to me, right? So by DFF ADP, he's going around the 10th spot, and DU, he's going more like 201, really, if we're looking at it here, right? And he went 13, 12, 13, right? So he went to 201 in 2 leagues, and he went to 12th spot in 1. I guess let's just talk about Charbonnet. This gives us an opportunity to talk about some of these players a little bit. Charbonnet falls to Seattle, and they do, the dumbest thing they could do. First of all, they pick Ken Walker last year way earlier than they need to. Then they go ahead and they draft Charbonnet to just absolutely crush fantasy managers' dreams.
After drafting JSN.
Yeah, I like JSN, and I don't mind the landing spot for him. I think he could be the best receiver in that room by the end of the year.
Over DK?
Maybe yes. Maybe he doesn't overtake DK, but he is that good of a prospect, and he's absolutely going to be the number 2 receiver there by the end of the year. But number 1 is in the range of outcomes for him this year, maybe next year, but definitely in the future. It is very, very within the range of outcomes. That said, Charbonnet, are you like, I was so high on him pre-draft, and obviously the NFL wasn't low on him. They went up and got his ass, but like, are we ignoring the landing spot? Do you care?
I think there's a bigger thing here at play that nobody's really discussing, at least that I've heard. I think this is more speaking to Seattle's comfortability over the next 3 years. They just signed Geno, but I don't think, I like Geno, don't get me wrong, but I don't think anybody's expecting him to take another leap forward. We all know what we have in Geno. He's a great game manager. Yes, he won't come back of the year and everything, but he's getting older. He's declining. I really think that they feel the pass game might start suffering, so they really want to bolster up the running back room. I'm still extremely high in Ken Walker. With Sharb, I don't know. I've had a couple opportunities to draft him, and I've gone off him, mainly just because I still think Walker's going to be the workhorse there. I could be completely wrong. This could blow up my face, but I just, in my opinion, if you're drafting at that 112, 113, there's some other better options than drafting Sharp.
Okay. Yeah. It sucks because you're not going to have another opportunity to get him is the issue, because like he's still valuable there. Obviously the 2-headed monster could be useful in fantasy as like flex options, but one of them goes down, Ken Walker goes down and Charbonnet is a stud all of a sudden. So
Right.
there's definitely value in having him, and I think he's going to get on the field. They talked about how he's a really good pass catcher, so I don't think that I think they have plans to use him slightly differently than Ken Walker, who I think they view and by the numbers is a little bit more of a home run hitter. So yeah, Sharp is tough. I haven't really had a chance to get him in any leagues. He would have been up in the mid first if he went anywhere else in that range for me. But really kicks him in the nuts.
Yeah, obviously I know what ADP is saying, and I know what draft results are saying and everything. But over the rookie deal, who do you think is going to have a better? Who do you think is going to be the better performer during the rookie deal, Gibbs or Sharp?
Oh, Gibbs by far. Yeah, Gibbs is. We can just jump up here and look at Gibbs. He went 7th in DU3. I really wish I had a pick up there in the first, and I actually think I tried to move up there and grab Gibbs, but he wouldn't really budge. He went 7th in 3, went 5th in 2, and in 1. And I think that's the right spot. He got picked, 12th overall in the draft? Like, it's insane. Yep. And I don't even like him that much, but just the value that he's going to maintain, you can trade him for really whatever you want, especially if you have a couple extra assets to package with him. You can really move him around if you want to move him around, and you can just wait and see what happens because they're clearly bought into Gibbs. So for me, I think easily Gibbs. I think Charbonnet is just handcuffed by the fact that he's not going to get enough usage. Like it sucks. It really sucks. Okay, next one I want to talk about here, and we're going at ADP standard deviation. So we're looking at the difference in ADP. Pretty big one here, right? 11th. Am I reading that right? Yeah, 11th round or 11th overall ADP in DFF's ADP. 17th overall ADP through the 3 leagues here for Jonathan Mingo. This one's a really interesting one, right? Jonathan Mingo went way earlier than anybody thought he was going to go. This is the Ole Miss wide receiver. I would say he's like a AJ Brown light kind of deal as far as look goes. I don't know. He's not. I didn't love what I saw in film, but I also saw, some upside there for sure. A little bit bigger, faster guy. He went 18th, 19th, and 16th in the 3 leagues. A little too late, clearly. Like with the draft capital he got, man, people let him fall way too far in those leagues. And I think the people who got him there are going to get a really good value. I think he's going to be a useful fantasy asset. I don't know how high the heights are, but I think he can be useful.
Mm-hmm. No, I see that, and I definitely agree. Yeah, his landing spot was very surprising to me. But again, his landing spot, he has great potential. He has pretty much looks almost right away. And I truly think that picking him obviously where he went in DU is a little late. I'd probably say 10 to 12 range, maybe 13, but
yeah, I got him at the 205 in a league recently. So I don't think, and that was a 14 team league with some heady players. So that's actually, that's closer to what our ADP is than what DFF has him at. And I think that just means the market hasn't really warmed up to him as they should, hasn't adjusted the way they should, because he got the draft capital. He landed in a spot with the quarterback that went first overall in the draft. And he's in line. If he is, just above average, he's in line to take the wide receiver 1 role instantly, like Josh said, instantly. So we have to focus in on that, and we have to take note of that and got to do something about that, right? Mm-hmm. Next one I want to talk about here is Kendre Miller. Okay. Sorry about that. Excuse me. Kendre Miller. So this is a guy who I actually passed up Kendre Miller because I wasn't a big fan of him pre-draft. I don't hate his landing spot. I think it's okay. I don't think it's a certainty that he takes over the role in New Orleans, right? He definitely has some obstacles to overcome in Kamara, in Jamal Williams, in just being a good player. But he is young. He's 21 years old. A lot of people really like him. He went after Mingo. He went, Kendre Miller went 17th, 14th, and 18th. So that's all over the place as well. 10th in ADP for DFF. 19th in DU ADP. 19th. I'm sorry. I think, no, not 19th. 16th in DU ADP. 12th in DFF ADP. I read the wrong line. So pretty big difference there. That's a pretty stark difference. I'm just not sold on Kendre Miller. Do you have any feelings on him?
I don't. I just think the running back room in New Orleans is a complete mess, and if he does anything, it won't be until probably his sophomore year. I don't see anything happen to Kamara unless they do a trade for him, but I just don't like the landing spot personally.
Yeah, I see the value in drafting running backs. Like, he's really young, like I said, and the running back position is pretty thin all over. So if you can, fall into one, if you can get one at a value, I understand it. So I do see the Kendre Miller upside. I do see why people like him. I just didn't think that he was a very polished runner. He's young. He can develop. Maybe I'm wrong on him. Don't love it. Marvin Mims, another one who I think we need to talk about. Just big discrepancy here in ADP. 10th overall for DFF, 19th for DU. People let him slip to 19, 22. 16 is probably, closer to where he should be, but I don't know, man. Sean Payton hand selected this guy. He's probably going to end up as the wide receiver 2 candidate on the Broncos. It's just a lot of, I think there's a lot of value in that. And if I think Russell Wilson's going to bounce back, I mean,
go get him. Go get your guy.
Right. And I think I think I might have been the earliest one to get Marvin Mims. I think I got him in the DU league. Maybe not. Maybe I didn't. Huh. I thought I did, but one way or another. I didn't have that many picks. That's why I'm kind of trying to remember. But
for sure. And one I want to talk about really quick is Luke Shoemaker.
Okay.
Sorry.
Luke Shoemaker.
Yeah, I'm just curious. What's your feeling on him taking target share away from Ferguson?
Yeah, I think they drafted Shoemaker in like the 3rd roundish or so, which is
he has better DC. He has better DC than Ferguson.
Right. Oh, for sure. Which I remember, that was my next sentence. If I remember correctly, they drafted 2 tight ends last year. It was Peyton Hendershot and Jake Ferguson, and both of them didn't have nearly this draft capital. So they like Shoemaker. He's going in DFF ADP 41. He actually went 10 spots earlier in DU ADP. So we're a little bit higher on him as a group than consensus. I think there's some opportunity there, to be honest with you. I didn't hate Hendershot, but when you see a team draft another tight end after taking 2 the year before, I think you got to put that in the book, make a little note and say, yeah, let me go get this guy. He's going at the he's going at the 4th round. Take your shot on Luke Shoemaker. Okay. We're going to touch on just a couple more. I'm going to pick up the really like high and low guys. So go back up once more for me. And we'll go to the bottom there in a second. So one guy I want to talk about, Cedric Tillman, right? I noticed this. DFF ADP of 16.2, DU ADP of 31.33.
Now, I'm not going to lie. I think a lot of this has to do with education.
No, but that's what I'm trying to point out.
Yeah.
Okay, so this not what I'm trying to point out. This is a good time to point out. Everybody thinks that everyone knows what they know. A lot of us, like you and I, are around listening to other analysts. We are playing with other analysts. We are with people who go home and start looking at spreadsheets for fun. You know what I'm saying? Like, the average dynasty player doesn't necessarily do that. They're picking off a feel. They're picking off just having fun. They don't want to put that much energy into it. They're listening to other people. They're not listening to anybody, So I do think that ignorance education is part of it. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get more people in the dynasty. We're trying to show you this so that you don't make these mistakes, because I'm assuming your drafts are probably a little bit later than May 1st, like ours started. Yeah. We just jumped right into it. So, or actually April 30th. We didn't even wait for May. So I think it's a good time to point out that this is a real thing, and it's not going to go away. Like, your average 10-team league is going to pick, Tank Bigsby like at the top of the 2nd, maybe by accident, because they don't know, because they knew of Tank Bigsby last year and heard from somebody he's great. So you got to watch out for those things. That's why we want you listening to us, and obviously and
get involved in the Discord.
And get involved in the Discord. And also, if you are listening to us, we are trying to tell you to take advantage of these things. Like, this is what you take advantage of. And it's a real thing. I've put on Twitter, don't pay for the tight ends because you'll be able to get them cheaper in the future. Somebody said to me, this is a big pet peeve of mine. This doesn't really work in practice. Maybe in your leagues, it doesn't. Maybe you're with a couple groups of like really heady dudes who are super into it and they know their stuff. But I've had it happen, and I'm in leagues with really good players. I'm in leagues with industry leagues, all that, you know what I mean? And I have stuff like this happen in all of them. So I don't think it's fair to kind of put our knowledge base on everybody else. I think that's what we do. We act like our knowledge base is the standard, and it's not. We are degenerates. Like, I don't know how else to explain it, but yeah, we are. That kind of hit me. So yeah, Cedric Tillman being this low, going to the Browns, having a really good shot at their wide receiver 2 role for Deshaun Watson. I was one of the people who got Cedric Tillman in the DU leagues. I picked him over Josh Downs. I was a little upset about that. Matt got him after me, and I think that Josh Downs has just as much of a chance to be a wide receiver 2 as well on his own team and probably walk right into it faster than Tillman does. But his QB is the question mark, and I love me some AR, but there's still that question mark. So I did kind of go with landing spot, kind of pushed me over with Tillman. But Josh Downs also had a pretty big difference here too in DFF ADP of 14, which is very high actually for the industry, and 25 for DU. He went pretty low in our leagues. He probably should have gone a little bit higher, slightly higher, I think. Just going to point out one or two more here. Dwayne McBride, 14.5. Dwayne McBride, 16.5 ADP, 37 DU ADP. This guy, he's not, I don't think he's like the best prospect ever, but he went 37 in all 3 leagues. That's funny. But I do think that he's in a really good spot. If Dalvin Cook, ends up on Miami or something, it leaves Alexander Mattison and Dwayne McBride pretty much in the backfield. So we got to put that on notice, and we can't, I don't think we should be letting Dwayne McBride slip this far down the draft boards at all. There's some other ones here definitely that we could pick out. I think Roschon Johnson's a good one, but either way, I think this gives you a good idea of kind of what can happen in your rookie drafts going forward, and what you can adjust to in your rookie drafts going forward.
Yeah, I have one I want to highlight before we move on.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely go down here. I do think this is interesting to look at because the guys with blanks here weren't drafted in the league, which is crazy.
That is, but I was going to specifically highlight Evan Hall. We've been talking about him a bunch. I made a trade for him a while ago. He didn't go in DU2, but DU1, he went 41. DU3, he went 46. Now, DFF, he went 25.
That's I'm so glad you picked this one out, Josh, and great job identifying that large difference, because Evan Hall, for me, I mean, I did a film review on him for DFF. If you want to go see the film room on YouTube, it's like one of the first ones I did when getting into building out the page. And he is just such a good runner. He's such a good running back. And he caught 55 passes last year and rushed for like 220 plus times. This guy is a workhorse type back. And yes, the landing spot's not great because he'll never be the workhorse there. But he, I think, is going to have real fantasy value. He's going to... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, for sure, especially with JT and his injury history, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, there's the opportunity, obviously. If JT gets injured, this guy is going to be, in my opinion, he will get the lead share of carries. They would probably bring somebody in or whatever like that, but he is a dual threat back. He is a really, really good rusher. He can run between the tackles. He has good vision. He has good bend. He can catch the ball. He is the total package. So I think, you see how they use Nyheim Hines in the past. This guy is Nyheim Hines, but can run, can actually run the ball. You know what I mean? Not faster or whatever, but he can run the ball. So going at the end of the draft, 41, 46 undrafted is just absolute foolishness. Evan Hall is Jonathan Taylor's handcuff. And to not even draft him in a rookie draft is bonkers to me. So this is a great point out here. I really like this. I got him at 46, I think. I may have been the one who got him at both these because I had 4th round picks and I really like Evan Hall. So that said, I do also want to point out Charlie Jones here. He went 42nd. He went 39th. Somebody, of course, jumped over me to take them in one. And I think in DU1 it was Dan. And dude, you can go straight to nowhere. It's just absolute nonsense. Just disrespectful. To be honest with you, disrespectful.
I dropped him today in a league just out of respect for you. Do it for the boys. Come on.
Thank you. Hey, everybody draft him in leagues I'm not in. Yes, but not my leagues. So I just want to point out Charlie Jones. He is a guy who is a exceptional route runner. I'm not even going to say competent. I'm not going to say above average. He's an exceptional route runner. He has real speed, like 4.3. I think he ran a 4.3, 4.4 speed. Maybe it was 4.4, but he has real speed. And the Bengals went up, drafted him in the 4th round, and I was calling all offseason about this is kind of like a Romeo Doubs type guy who could end up, and exactly 4th round, goes to the Bengals, he will be the wide receiver 3 come 2024. 100%. He will be the wide receiver 3. Tyler Boyd is a free agent after this year. Trenton Irwin is not even, he doesn't even sniff it. Like, he can't carry his jockstrap. Okay. Charlie Jones is going to take that over instantly. So going at the end of the 4th undrafted is just, it can't happen. That's not possible. Don't do that.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the last thing I wanted to say. There's some other ones we could point out here. If you want to talk to us more about this, I'm going to link this into our Discord, and it'll be there in the Stats and Graphs channel. We can pin it. We can talk about it. All the listener leagues, I'm sure we'll jump in there and have fun with it. So I really enjoyed doing that. I think it's a very, very good thing to look at, especially we started these so early, so you can see a lot of picks that you can adjust to going forward. I'm sure a lot of people's fantasy drafts are kind of, in the next couple of weeks here, maybe closer to the season. I've seen that too. But I think that, our listener leagues are actually pretty heady people. So I don't think this is like, far off from what is actually happening. Obviously, I put it up against our DFF ADP, and that's an industry ADP. That's all of our staff kind of doing it together. So these are also guys who are much more plugged in. So those differences, you do see why they're happening. Now it's your turn to adjust to them now that we've showed you what's going on there.
Oh, for sure.
Cool.
All right.
Trades and non-trades. Finish it off.
Everybody's favorite segment.
Hell yeah. This is a great time.
So a lot of these are mine this week because I have a couple weeks to catch up on here. So
yeah, you do, bro. Oh my goodness.
All right. So first one, traded away Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, Adam Thielen, and 3 Debbie picks, and Debbie depleted for Lamar Jackson and Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah, this is an interesting trade. Were the 3 Debbie picks what were they? Like in range, were they 2nd round picks, 3rd round?
No. It was 6.18, 8.18, and I think a 10.18.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
I mean, I want the Lamar side here for sure. I think that especially if you have another quarterback on your roster, then I think this is good. You did give up Dak and Russ for Lamar, but it's probably fair. And then Adam Thielen and the 3 W picks for Wan'Dale. I mean, that's fine. Yeah.
My other quarterbacks in that league are Mac Jones, David Mills, Kenny Pickett, Anthony Richardson, and Tua.
Oh yeah, is this a C2C league?
It's straight Debbie. It's not
straight Debbie. That's not a terrible quarterback room for Debbie, especially if you have Lamar Jackson and if AR hits. Even if he doesn't, you have Pickett and Mac to kind of work with. I'd personally try to trade Mac off that roster if I were you. I have a feeling you might have just acquired him on that roster because I remember a Mac trade, but
no. I had Mac for a while. Mac was in DU.
I have a lot more faith in Kenny Pickett getting chances and succeeding with kind of the roster around him. So I'm okay with that. I think now I'm going past the trade, but just thinking about your roster, the fact that you have kind of a surplus there, I might look to move on from Mac early, get ahead of it. I don't think he'll ever really be a difference maker for your team. And maybe you can kind of get more positional value or, replenish some Debbie picks, early ones, that is.
Yep.
I like this trade though. This trade on the face of it, I do like going for Lamar Jackson here. This one I do think is a little bit of like not being scared to make a deal that'll hurt a little bit because Russ and Dak can easily have great seasons. But you have to be okay with doing that for the top tier fantasy.
Right. Asset. No, of course.
I like it.
So the next trade is the one that I alluded to earlier when we were talking about possibly losing trades now to win in the long run. Traded away Najee, Kenny Pickett, and the 105 for 101 and Baker Mayfield.
That is some hot fire. Now I can see 105 and Najee for Bijan, right? That's essentially what it is.
Yeah.
Like you went Bijan, I assume.
I'm going to, yeah. So I also have I have the 1.04. So I had 1.4, 1.5. I was going to probably do back-to-back quarterbacks or quarterback JSN or something, but I need running backs. I have Swift and I have Najee for the most part. And Breece Hall. And Breece Hall.
Okay. Yeah, but you do need running backs. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So my feeling was as much as I like Najee, I'm expecting him to bounce back year. I kind of rather gamble on Bijan, who I don't have any shares of right now. Gamble on him to come in, pair him with Breece Hall, hopefully he comes back 100%. And then take the quarterback who falls to 104, which will probably be AR. So we'll have to see what happens. But
And who's your other quarterback?
in that league, Kyler Murray.
Okay, so you're rebuilding. So this is like for the 2024 season is what it would be.
Primarily,
I like that.
I traded away a bunch of assets for some high upside injury players and Brees and Kyler.
No, honestly, I like that. Like the way that you're doing that makes sense to me. Almost all the assets kind of line up with the same strategy of kind of playing for the future, with Kyler coming back, with AR maybe coming into his own, with Bijan having a full career ahead of him, Brees full career ahead of him, moving on from older Najee, Pickett, question mark, JSN, obviously a really good piece. But I really do like kind of that move. That makes a lot of sense. I think you did probably give up value on the face of the trade, but in the end, this makes a lot of sense for your team, and you're not giving up too much value for it.
Yep. And my feeling is I'll roll out. It'll probably either be CJ or AR with that 104 pick. So my feeling is roll them out and Baker while Murray's coming back from injury. Then obviously switch Baker and Kyler out. But
you better hope Baker wins that job. You better hope Baker wins that job. That's for sure. But
yeah. But I mean, originally the guy wanted Najee Pickett at 105 for just a 101. So I got him to add in Baker just as a little bit of a fluff, but also gives me some quarterback protection with the hope that Baker wins out that starting job.
Yeah. It's a lot to pay for the 101, but I get why you did it. I do think that Bijan will maintain the most value early on. It's going to be interesting to see what you're going to have to do with that team, thinking about it, because you have a lot of very valuable assets. I'm wondering if there's a world where you trade some of these running backs and get buku.
Let me tell you who else I have on this roster. I have Swift, we'll see what happens, but then Rashad Bateman, Jalen Waddle, Cole Kmet, Freiermuth, Mike Thomas, Romeo Doubs, Wan'Dale Robinson, John Mechie, Conklin, Irv Smith, Ferguson, Okonwo, Kate Otten, Brian Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of good pieces on that roster for sure. I think I might be trying to get another quarterback with some of those other pieces. That'd probably be the next goal. But that's a cool trade. That's interesting. Good way to get Bijan and get out of Najee, I guess.
Yeah. I just have so many shares of him that I felt when this opportunity presented itself, let me sacrifice one share to pull up a share of Bijan and see what happens. Alrighty, next trade. Traded a 2025 third for Calvin Austin.
I don't love that. I just don't think Calvin Austin's really ever going to be anything. So, I mean, I know the 2025 third's forever away, and you could probably get it back, but just Calvin Austin doesn't really do anything for me. I mean, he's in Pittsburgh, right? Like they have Allen Robinson plus the other two guys there, like Pickens and Deontay. So, not a big fan.
No, I hear that one. It was just more, like you said, 2025 third so far out, and it's easy to get it back. Let me just gamble on it just in case.
Okay, not something I would really do, but I get it.
I know you wouldn't, Mr. Risk Averse. All right, next trade. In one of the DU leagues, I only had two quarterbacks. I believe it's DU2. Josh Allen. I can't remember who else. So I traded 204, 2025 second, and Ben Skowronek for Mac Jones. Not sexy by any means, but
no, I don't hate it. I mean, I'm not a big Mac Jones fan, but that's not expensive to get Mac Jones either. Like that's, okay, maybe if that's the value for Mac Jones right now, maybe you wait to trade Mac Jones and hope that he does something, because like you're not getting that much there. It's a early second and a 25 second. I don't know. I mean, yeah. I think he has more potential than that trade suggests.
All right. Next trade. Traded away Albert O, the 1.3 and the 3.07 for Irv Smith, Romeo Doubs, 104 and 204.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Definitely. Irv Smith is going to be, at least has the upside. Alberto no longer does. Romeo Doubs, whatever. I mean, I'm a fan. You move down one spot and you move up like a whole round plus. Yeah, like that's an easy win for you.
Yep. And then finally traded away Denzel Mims for Isaiah Spiller.
Yeah, whoever traded for Mims, they're insane. Like,
yeah, no, this kid in a couple of my leagues, this guy, sorry, in a couple of my leagues went around and was just buying Mims wherever he could. And he originally asked me, it was Mims he wanted Mims for me, and he was going to give me some like RB3 on a team. I can't even remember who it is right now, but he had Isaiah Spiller. So I was like, let me just ask him. And he's like, yeah, I'll do that trade. I'm like, cool.
what is this guy dating Mims' mom? Like, what are we doing here? Like, there's no reason. Like, he has zero fantasy value. What, Aaron Rodgers, and he's like, Mims. Like,
yeah, that's pretty much exactly what happened. It was right after the Aaron Rodgers trade got announced and he was like, oh my God, Mims is going to have the shot. So I was like, okay, I'll take it. And then I text Jake. I'm like, hey, Mr. King of Micro Trades, I have a question for you. And
I love that. And he is the king of micro trades. That is true.
I love Jake. And then I think it was yesterday, the day before, he literally texted me. He's like, well, the Chargers didn't take any running back, so that's a good sign for Spiller. I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah. That is I can't believe Mims is still on the Jets. They've just brought in like 14 of Rodgers' friends to play wide receiver. Plus they have Garrett Wilson and Corey Davis. Like, there's no room for him there. I'd be shocked if he makes the roster.
I'm shocked Corey Davis is still on the roster. I really thought he was going to get traded for a late round pick during the draft.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't bad last year. Like, he had some interesting games. I mean, the whole team was terrible, but he did have some decent games with I think it was with Zach Wilson, maybe. Maybe it was Mike White.
I think it was Mike White.
Yeah. I can't remember. Yeah, I don't know if anybody had good games with Zach Wilson last year. But okay, let's
Conklin. That's about it.
Conklin, yeah. Let's finish it off, bringing it full circle, talking about winning losing a trade now, winning in 6 months, right? Not being afraid to kind of make those moves. Josh talked about one he did, right, for Bijan, trying to kind of look ahead, get out from some declining assets or potential declining assets. This is what I put his name twice, so that wouldn't make sense. This is a trade that I just got done. So essentially noticing how the back end of the first is kind of a wasteland, and how I'm not a really big fan of the wide receivers in this class, to a point where like I just got to stay in this draft and draft them. I have a team where like I think I'm more a year out than I am this year, so I'm like willing to kind of just not forego this year, but move on from some pieces and see what happens and pick up some value going forward. So what I'm doing here is moving on from Swift. I'm trying to show you guys how to do this and not be afraid to do it. So
okay. So it's reversed.
What?
You traded away the right side and you got the left side.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I did put that backwards, I guess, for our purposes. Yes. So I traded away again. So I don't think Swift, like I think DeAndre Swift moving to the Eagles is good for his production. Obviously, that said, they traded like a 4th round pick for him. So the investment wasn't that great. They have Rashad Penny there. They have Jalen Hurts is going to take a lot of the rushing touchdowns. So he's going to be more of a big play threat kind of guy, more of a boom bust type of running back. And at this point, he's kind of leaking value, right? Swift is leaking value. And that said, he's getting some hype from going to the Eagles. So I'm selling him at a high point, right, where a lot of people think maybe his value is turning around from what it was at the Lions. So I packaged Swift with my 107, and I ended up throwing in Mechie because that's what this guy wanted. And I'm not a huge Mechie guy. I love the story. I'm just not a huge Mechie. What?
I'm just so high on him that I would never consider him just a throw in.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, they drafted Tank Dell pretty early. They have a couple options. I'm just not a big fan of Mechie as a player in general. I just didn't think he was great coming out. So I didn't mind doing that. And so I traded Swift, Mechie in a 1.07 for a likely top 3, but a top 5 24 first and a 309. So I think a lot of people would look at this trade and be like, you absolutely got washed, right? And I understand that, because this is probably like Swift and maybe Addison and Mechie for a 24 first, right? But that 24 first can potentially get me to Marvin Harrison Jr. And if I can get, to Marvin Harrison Jr., then this trade doesn't even matter at that point. Like everybody would take Marvin Harrison Jr. next year over those 3 players, because he's going to be a stud. So there is risk in this. I think DeAndre Swift's value will sharply decrease over the next year or two here. And so I'm not super concerned about giving up the current value because I know that in a year from now, it's going to look a lot more like giving up 107 Mechie and a back end running back for a top 3, top 4, top 5, 24 first. The person I traded with, their team is like really, really rough. They're going to need a lot of help and do a lot of things to get themselves out of the hole they're in this year or next year. Yeah. So I think I have a really, really good shot with this one in coming out on top. But this is, I think, a good example of stepping outside your comfort zone, right? Understanding that you are giving up value for sure. Like when he asked for Mechie to be thrown in, and I was like I knew, I'm like, he's going to gain value over time. Yeah. This does tip the trade over into his favor for sure. But my team, in the way that I construct my teams, I'm not going to use Mechie as a player in my lineup. So I'm trying to get to top end assets. That's all I'm really trying to do. And that's what this was an attempt to do, was move on from middling good assets to top end asset in 24 that'll push my team over the top.
No, that makes perfect sense. And we always talk about consolidation. And I did that in a couple of my trades. If you're able to consolidate some mid to top players for some excellent players, by all means, shoot your shot. SYS that thing.
I like it. SYS that thing.
No, really. So really quick before we wrap up, the 23 draft class for the last 2 or so years was hyped up to this mecca. This is going to be the best draft class in years. Blah blah blah.
I love this. Yeah.
Do you think it lived up to the hype?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay.
It definitely didn't. It took a nosedive. It really did. And I think any class can do that. I think there's a number of reasons that this one didn't go as well as it could have. COVID may have played in part of it, kind of leading up to this year. You know what I mean? And kind of how the trajectory of all the players, their career arcs kind of went. That could have potentially had an impact. That said, I think, the idea of trading for future firsts and those future classes should always be targeting the bottom end teams in your league. So you really do manage whatever risk happens with the class, right? Because you see the top 6 in the class are pretty safe, right? The top 6 in the class, you're like, I want those guys for sure. Like, I'll take a shot on them. But after that, you start wavering. So there's a ton of risk in like hyping up the class and just going all for next year. But you see, like in Dynasty and our listener leagues, Dylan, who is in all 3 of them, he went ahead and got like all the 23 picks. And, the class was not that great, but his team looks really good. And the class is good enough to, if you do something like that and you gave up last year to get into this year's class, like, you're going to have tons of value. You can sell these guys. You can move Jahmyr Gibbs for this, that, and the other. We've seen actually what he did. He was able to move, some of the top first for quarterbacks and this, that, and the other. So, I think managing expectations is huge, right? Like, you gotta just know that not every class is going to be amazing, no matter what the analysts tell you, no matter what everybody tells you. Everybody does their best to evaluate these players. The Devy folks, the C2C folks, they're looking at them longer than the NFL is, and yet still, guys like Bo Nix, super high QB prospect, drafted in top of Devy drafts probably 3 years ago or so, just tanks at the end of his his collegiate career. So there's just some things you can't predict with these college players. So you just got to take it for what it's worth and know that getting into next year's draft definitely has some risks, but I think that's with any draft. I don't think that we should look at the 23 draft and go, yep, can't look at 24 and see a really good class and go after that class. Like,
right. So I did. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, the last thing I'll say is, in all likelihood, you probably got the 23 picks at a cheaper rate than you would have waiting. You got it because everybody was telling you to buy them back then. So most likely you're not really worrying about the return on those investments.
That makes perfect sense. Last thing, and then we'll wrap it up. I just got my first share of Archie Manning.
Did you? Where'd you have to draft him?
CTC. I made a trade for him. Traded a bunch of Debbie assets or Debbie future picks for him. I'm very on my C2C side. I'm very weak in my quarterback room. Felt if there was going to be a guy to shoot my shot on, why not be Manning? So kind of went all in. Traded. I think it was a third, a six, and a future second and something for him. In my opinion, it wasn't that big of an overpay. So let him run my bench for the next 3 to 4 years and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, in those kind of leagues, if you can do it for something that's not like breaking the bank, then it's fun having Archie Manning on your team. You know, I think that there's a lot of questions. I'll be honest, I haven't really seen him play or watched him play much or seen scouting film on like what he's been doing. I don't know what the hell he's been doing, but I haven't heard great things about it. I've heard that there's a lot of questions about what he can actually become. So not to down your trade. I think that it's perfectly fine value to give up for a prospect like him. I'm just talking about what I'm hearing. So
of course. And don't get me wrong, I going into this, I completely knew the risk that was going to be involved with it. He's a true freshman coming in. He has all this hype around him. Who knows if he'll live up to the hype or if he'll wash out, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's fair. Honestly, thinking back about this 23 class, like it's not as bad as everybody wants to say. Quentin Johnson, great landing spot. Zay Flowers, I think a good landing spot for him. Jordan Addison, going to be useful in Minnesota. Those are all usable fantasy assets. There's definitely expectations are everything, and I think that's the problem. I think that's what happened. Everybody set themselves up for failure. JSN, great asset. Everybody wants to kill it. No, it's worse than everybody hyped it up to be, but I think it's still a really good class. So I'm not super down on it.
No, I'm very excited to see how this draft class plays out.
Yeah. I came all the way around on that in like 5 minutes. So
all righty. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Dynasty Underdog. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Dynasty Underdog, at Willie Beaming DFF, at Josh M Goldberg 92, and at Uriah Dawkins. Join our Discord and feel better, Uriah. See you next week.
Yep. Peace out, fam.